was a friend of Tramadol. It was a friend of red. So,
those are the street names of Tramadol. We learned on our trip the drug is sold at marijuana joints, alcoholic and street joints, just like banned narcotic substances. We followed them to some drinking spots as they used these code names to purchase 250 milligrams of the narcotic painkiller Tramadol. These are two gentlemen who decided to share what they do with Tramadol with us. And they bought 250 milligrams. That's 4 tablets. Each contains 250 milligrams of Tramadol. And so now they've put 2 tablets, that is 500 milligrams, into this bottle of energy drink. And he tells me that that is what they do every day. The Tramadol energy drink solution is taken with a round of marijuana, as they demonstrated.
Some she, Naman, some Matoe, and say no, Matoe, and say, Mukutui, Akao, intimation.
I drink this with a round of marijuana. I drink slowly whilst smoking the weed. I get high after that. I sweat and feel good, prepared for any task. But if you don't eat before taking it, you can faint and foam in the mouth.
So the quiet Juma with me, I don't want I Jumano.
He told me the market even has 300 milligrams of the drug sold by drug peddlers and at wee bases across the Ashanti region.
You are the way of white, and so more Libya, white.
We have another type called white. That is 300 milligrams. I take that as well. But you can get that at Alaba or Mayanka. Reporting for JoyNews, Erastus Asaredonko, Kumasi.
I had to answer a question in Parliament on the use of Tramadol in the country amongst young people like you. And when I Googled, and I got information from Food and Drugs Authority, and the side effects and the impact on your health of Tramadol, you are medical people. If you should Google and look at what Tramadol can do to your system, your organs, your brain, I don't think any of you would dare again. And the other things that young people will also try to take advantage of, the herbs and other things. These are very serious issues we have to confront them. They are all addictive. You understand that? So you cannot take yourself away from it when you get hooked on. And that is the most dangerous aspect of the use of these drugs.
Right, so Erastus Asaredonko bringing us a report from Kumasi, and you heard the health minister also re-echoing the dangers that Tramadol can be to those who are consuming it in the manner that they are doing. Now, I think that we can all be thankful to one man, Kwame Esiedu Sapong. He is a pharmacist, a Ghanaian, and he is based in the United Kingdom, and he has been a sole advocate and made sufficient noise to the point that the media had to take on and continue from where he left off. Kwame Esiedu Sapong is on the line with us from London. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us, Kwame.
Good morning, Samson.
Great.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you. Now, I'd like you to give us to start off on the basics about what is Tramadol, what is it for, and what the dangers are. Then subsequently, an area of major concern for you for your crusade, which is about the threat, national security threat and implications as regards Tramadol. So what is Tramadol and why is it a matter for concern now?
Thanks, Samson. Tramadol is what we would call a synthetic opiate analgesic. So when you talk about a synthetic opiate, it is not naturally occurring as you would have the likes of morphine and other things naturally occurring. It is synthesized, so it's human-made. It has a specific license, and the specific license is for moderate to severe pain. So it's not just a painkiller. It's used specifically for moderate to severe pain. It can also be used in post-operative pain. That is, when someone has had an operation and is recovering and other painkillers are not seen to be effective, but the doctors do not want to go into the classical opiates, the high-range morphine, diamorphine, and stuff like that. So you can use it for that. And it can also be used in arthritis in the and have stopped working. So it has a very narrow use. Even then, the prescribable doses range from what we call 37.5 milligram when it comes in combination with paracetamol through 50 milligram up to 100 milligram.
Right.
So those are the prescribable doses. What you get, even when you take these doses, can be scary because even with people taking 37.5, they have been reports of hallucinations. There have been reports of jerkiness. There have been reports of suppression of what we call their flight stimuli. So you get to the point where the person really starts reacting. There's nausea, there's vomiting, there's inability to coordinate, and all those things. So it has significant side effects, even at the prescribable doses. And there have been times when doctors have had to switch patients off Tramadol because of some of these side effects. What my concern has been is the fact that there has been a sudden trend, like your report from Kumasi showed, where people are using Tramadol as an illicit drug. That is where my concern comes from. But more importantly, they are not just using it as an illicit drug, they are using non-prescribable strengths. So the strengths you see being abused are the 120 milligram, 200 milligram, 225 milligram, 250 milligram, and 500 milligram, and 300 milligram, sorry. So you are talking about between 2 and 6 times the strengths that are legitimate. So if you're looking at that from a medical standpoint or from a pharmaceutical standpoint, a drug has what we call a therapeutic window. That is the lower level from which it is safe and the upper level from which it becomes harmful to the body. Already, the strengths they are taking are technically outside this window. So the only reason why they are taking it is because they get the side effects, which is why they abuse it. But then, that is where the danger starts from, because at that point, scientifically, you talk about something called tachyphylaxis, which simply means the more you take of a drug, the more you require it, and the higher the quantity you need to get the same effect. So people will start from 120 milligram. Before they are aware, they are taking 200 milligram. Before they are aware, 225, 250, 300. And then they start taking it in multiples. So like your report said, some will take even 4 tablets and mix it with an energy drink. I don't want to divulge too much information, but then there is also people mixing this with certain cough mixtures on the market, adding on energy drinks and drinking them. And some of these cough mixtures contain some substances that are addictive themselves. But because they're being used for coughs and in low doses, you cannot get the addictive potential if you take them as prescribed medically or if given to you by the pharmacist.
Now, Kwame.
Now, then go on.
Yes, the information available as we get to know, for example, that in November last year, Italian authorities seized, a Tramadol shipment from India to Libya worth 50 million euros. 6 months earlier, they had seized a shipment worth 75 million euros. and they believe that this was destined for ISIS bases in Libya. That is critical to note, for ISIS bases in Libya. Also in Cotonou, in Benin, we are told that it's become the latest hub, largely due to the country's relatively weak custom officials. And in 2015, 40 million tablets of Tramadol were seized there. We are hearing also or reading about early this year, 39 million tablets worth 3 billion naira, with about above prescription quantity per tablet that were seized in Nigeria. What is the situation as far as Ghana is concerned? What do we know? And what are the failings of authority? What can authority do? FDA, the Ministry of Health, central government, particularly also that you look at this as a national security issue, which really it is. What it ought to be done? What is the situation and what ought to be done?
Samson, the situation in Ghana is that the drugs are not generally landed in Ghana. When I say landed in Ghana, it means that they are not coming through our legitimate ports. Yes, the Narcotics Control Board has said that they seized 2 containers sometime back about 3-4 years ago. But most of the landing is being done, like you rightly said, in Benin. And then when it's landed in Benin, it's sent across their border to Nigeria for Boko Haram, which is very well documented. And then it's transported across land borders into Ghana, Burkina Faso, and Ivory Coast. When they started, why I say it's become a human security problem, and why people would often ask me, why am I not concentrating on morphine, pethidine, and other opioids, is that there is a clear link between tramadol and terrorism. It has been established so much so that there has been a United Nations Resolution 5614 on that menace and the requirement from the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime for countries to feed in information for these things to be tracked. As a result, last year, there was a seizure of about 3 million tablets in Mali that were concealed in United Nations memorabilia. And that's serious. That's how ambitious the people have become. But why it's become a human security problem is that when they target a country, the first thing they do is to create addicts. The minute they create the addicts, they start controlling these addicts. And once they become their handlers, they use the drugs to start blackmailing them. And that is why when you go to Nigeria, for example, there's a lot of body of evidence that a lot of Boko Haram suicide bombers who have failed or their recruits who've been arrested have had significant quantities of tramadol on them, or when they are seen to be in a state of zombie situation, they've also tested their blood and they found high levels of tramadol in their blood. When you bring it to Ghana, if you speak to the police confidentially, they tell you that for about 18 months, they have seen an increased trend that when they go on raids and other things, they find these tablets with criminals. The sad truth was that a lot of the police didn't even know what tramadol looked like. So they just took it as just another tablet that was on the market. But if I go back to what I'm telling you, I began to get worried when I saw the unnecessary shoot-to-kill attitude of a lot of our armed robbers and the fact that in broad daylight they were exchanging gunfire with the police. I said, what's going on here? But if you look at it from a medical standpoint, their bravado is due to what is called the serotonin syndrome. When they are so high that they are not able to run, they are not able to flee, and they are not scared because that stimuli has been suppressed by the opiate. When that happens, they just go into open gunfire because they think that the only thing is to defend themselves, and if they have a gun, they must shoot it. So if they come into your home, even if you raise your finger, they'll feel threatened. They'll shoot you. And these are the concerns I have.
Okay, so
that are currently happening in our country.
So finally
forward,
and briefly, yes, moving forward, yes.
I don't want a situation whereby they would have a critical mass of recruits with the soft targets available in Ghana where they can commit mass crime. That is my biggest worry.
So at the national level, that's your final point for us. At the national level, what do you desire, feel ought to be the response?
Samson, the response has to be 3 or 4 prongs. There needs to be enforcement of the law. There needs to be acceptance that though the Food and Drugs Board is doing its bit, now this is beyond them. In all countries that have been targeted, they don't leave it to their drug regulators to fix the problem because it has criminal connotations.
Okay.
The Pharmacy Council needs to also get up and doing because without wanting to put my colleagues on the spot, I can say that on the basis that there's an underground investigation going on, which I'm involved in with one accuracy granting, we have significant evidence that pharmacy shops are selling Tramadol. They would deny it. And we've got it on tape.
Right.
They are selling Tramadol indiscriminately without asking any questions. And without wanting to be alarmist, we have given the evidence to the Pharmacy Council. They are aware of what I'm saying.
Okay.
We've been collaborating with them for about 3 weeks now.
Great job.
So they are aware.
Great job.
They are also doing their bit.
All right.
But what I am saying is that it is time for national security, the BNI and the police, to go after these social misfits.
Okay.
It's now become a national security issue because even the addicts on the street, we don't have a coherent drug rehabilitation policy as a country.
Okay.
We don't have drug rehabilitation centers.
Right.
So we are even saddled with a problem where our GDP is going to be hit because we have high unemployment.
Right.
There has been a creation of addicts
Kwame,
that we have no means of dealing with.
Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much, Kwame. Siedu Sapong is a pharmacist, consultant, and an advocate. I say, is the chief sole advocate on this matter, and has single-handedly, through the use of social media, power of social media, brought sufficient attention to this menace. Okay, now, who do I start with? Doc, what's your appreciation of what is going on as far as this thing is concerned?
I think from all that he has said, it's clear that it is a menace we have to deal with. In fact, the World Health Organization November 2017 report signaled that in West Africa it is becoming a canker that we need to deal with it. So I would expect, as he said, we should not leave it to FDA only. All the security agencies to get involved, in addition to our schools.
The examples are referred to, it is the security agencies that are cracking down on these. And these are prescription drugs, right? And people are buying them over the counter.
But the interesting thing is that it is not listed on the WHO model list of essential medicines. It's not listed there. At least the November 2017 the WHO report indicates that. So once the awareness has been raised, it is up to us as a nation to prioritize it and then do a lot more sensitization and education. I think we should also activate the guidance and counseling units of our respective institutions, both at the tertiary and then secondary levels. And then also, we should target the informal sector. Because look, as most of these people may not understand the implications of all of that. So we have a lot of work to do. But again, who is to do it? The national institutions to do this are really greatly underfunded. NCCE can help, but then they are under-resourced. So let us tackle them head on before it gets out of hand.
Kwaku, as Doc said, it is obvious that some of the users, they do not have bad intentions. For some of them, they need it to work. And you could hear them in that interview that when they take it, they can do any sort of work without feeling tired or any pain. Of course, there are the others who know and use it for specific purposes, including for armed robbery and so on. So how do you go about such a situation? And we understand that we should be careful, otherwise it is consuming our youth.
Yes, you sent us, to be honest with you, again, but for Joy FM's recent exposés, I really hadn't adverted my mind to this matter. I have to be honest with you. But yesterday, by courtesy of this station, you sent us this thing from United Nations Office on Drugs and crime.
Right.
It's a press release. I think signed by one Jeffrey Bauer. Explosive. When I read this thing, I said, my goodness, we might be sitting on a time bomb waiting to explode.
You have underlined almost every sentence.
Yes.
What's the sticking point for you here? What's the sticking point for you here you want to share?
One thing is, it appears this legally, it's a legal drug under international law. That's one thing. It is the non-medical use or the abuse of it that has become the challenge and the need to deal with it. I'm surprised that some of them said it makes them work, because when I read this document, I'm told that it affects efficiency and productivity of workers, perhaps the overdose of it, you know. Some of the things they were saying, it took me back to the days when we were young, you know. A similar thing used to happen here, but I think this is more dangerous because there's a linkage to terrorist groups. And they bind them in their thousands. It gives you courage. So you go out there and do anything you want to do. You know, and I find this document very, very serious, you know. The misuse, let me point, you see, this one. It says about 70%, 75% of the 70 million men and women in the Sahel are under the age of 25, making the youth in the Sahel an attractive market for drug traffickers. This means they are unfortunately exposed to the risks linked to abusive use of tramadol and illicit drugs, often sold at cheap prices. The youth. That's dangerous. I mean, for the future. You know, so to be honest, there's a need for our law enforcement agencies, the Pharmaceutical Council, and all those bodies, public education as well, I agree with Doc, to get on board in this matter. I, sitting here, don't have the precise solutions, but I'm frightened. And this was after I had read this, even though what you were putting out was quite important. When I finished reading this document you sent to us yesterday, I got very, very frightened. It's going to need a sub-regional and international collaboration to deal with that thing, because it looks as if it's like the cocaine and heroin and the rest. That's how it's becoming, you know. And so there's a need for the West African countries to get together. The UN body itself is putting up some preventive measures for us to get in terms of collaboration. Something quick must be done. Some of us were rescued by, you know, yes, I'm being honest with you, in the late 60s, coming to about the late 70s or even 80s. We used to, the guy said, there were all sorts of things, mandrax, LSD, you know, which we used to combine. And then we also go and buy our weed and put it together. And you can do anything, you can go anywhere. We were rescued by redirecting our focus. Some have become ministers and diplomats and what, heads of states in this country. But that was then. Now the population is bigger. Terrorism is on the front line. Big criminal organizations have developed. I'm not too sure if we don't take quick action whether we can rescue our youth, like some of us were rescued.
So, Nana, the point on which Kweku ends, that statement says he's not sure if we don't take action now whether we can rescue our youth.
Well, thank you. Yes, I think by now the harmful effects of this drug is beyond debate. I never heard of the gentleman that you interviewed, but you say that he initiated a certain public campaign. But what I have heard is that a lot of you in the media have taken it up, and I've had several discussions on major media platforms on the harmful effects of this drug. Even on Newsfile.
Yes, on Ghana Connect, on TV, almost everywhere. I've watched stuff from GH1 where people have actually gone to these pharmacies and drug stores, and they are buying the prescription drug without any inhibition.
Incredible.
So even to have it on a program like this is a major fight against this drug. So there's no debate about the harmful. We've got the United Nations report. We've got reports from pharmacies. Every medical institution is telling us about the harmful effects. What we have to do now is to continue the public education, intensify it. More media should give more time to it. Look at the media that, not just English-speaking media, but particularly the local language media should also get involved. The community radios should get involved in the discussions to sensitize people. The first form of defense is for the person themselves to know that this is harmful to me. And then the second response should be the enforcement. The Ministry of Health, NACOP, Customs.
The FDA, even in Kumasi, have shown that they did some work last year, very effective. And this year, you are hearing from the FDA also, they are taking certain steps. But I think it's about how they escalate it.
Yes.
Yes.
It has to be escalated. The enforcement or the preventive. So all the plethora of state agencies, Customs, NACOP, FDA, Pharmacy Council, the hospitals, the police, BNI, because of the security implications, the way it can psych people up to commit crime and terror. So national security, BNI, all of them, all of them should come together. I don't know if there has to be some presidential body on that, comprising all these bodies. Maybe we need that.
Right.
Because the report so far show that the use is quite widespread among young people. And also the price. Yes.
At one city.
Yes, it's so affordable and what is so readily available, and it's been smuggled for most parts. So the international dimension too, ECOWAS, West African level, even at the World Health Organization, some international effort is needed. I'm happy that the awareness has now been created and all parties seem to be involved. I'm sure the Ministry of Health will give you a list of activities that
the minister has started talking about it.
Yes.
Everywhere he goes.
Very good. So if we continue like this and escalate, I'm sure the harmful effects of this drug will be controlled.
Okay. Now, Isaac, see, this is a teacher, I'll mention her name so that she doesn't get into trouble with her students. She teaches social studies at the JHS level. And this teacher, I got to know her sometime last year when she had not been paid her salary for over a year. And she went to the controller and people were asking for her to bribe so that, you know, they will get the thing worked out and then she will give a percentage. All of that period, she never absented herself from teaching. I'm talking in that in respect of my take. She never absented herself, and yet she was not paid for years. Now, she says, in one of my class, talking about drug abuse, I had the shock of my life when my student told me about the use of Tramadol and Rush energy drink and other energy drinks. They schooled me in what they do. I was so shocked and they were laughing. I felt so down. A student told me how he used to abuse Tramadol and Indian hemp. We need to bring all stakeholders in the education, institutions on board as well. It made me stop selling some energy drinks in the school's shop. Ghana is really at risk. Our next generation is at risk. Okay, so when I was talking about her salary, she now actually says 4 years and still in arrears.
What?
How can this happen?
What are you saying?
Yes.
It's a dramatic system.
Wow.
4 years and she's still in arrears. Some of her colleagues agreed with some people at the wherever, and then they got their salaries and they gave a cut of some percentage to some people. She disagrees. She says it's my money, it must come to me only. Okay, that's serious. Yeah.
Yeah. to be honest with you, the last time I paid attention to this was when I heard that there was a crackdown in Tamale. But all over the place for the past 2 weeks, I was busy doing something. So I decided, what is it, the Tramadol, that there should be a crackdown somewhere. Then I got to realize that I was somehow living in a strange land. This is something that is sweeping all over the place. And as a country, we know that we have several challenges with our youth. And the last thing we want to have is something of this magnitude. Listening to the expert, he makes allusion to the fact that this is not a landed product. What it then means is that it comes in through our borders. And our borders are quite porous, quite porous. So any attempt to fight this will need a very coordinated effort. And if we are not able to engage in international collaboration like Koku has said, and also improve the surveillance on our borders, it is going to be difficult once it comes in, you know, to be able to fight it. And once it comes in, we know Food and Drugs Board is already...
Okay, sorry, let me correct this before it gets too late. She's explaining to me that she's been paid, but 4 years in arrears. Thank you very much.
Okay. So you'll find that Food and Drugs Board itself, in terms of pharmacovigilance, is struggling. I recall recently when we were approving the budget, we had cause to say, to appeal to the Minister of Finance to find a way to exempt them from this capping, because it is one area that once it gets out of hand, we will spend a lot and yet we won't get any results out of it. And I think that with what is happening now, that appeal is quite legitimate, that the minister should find a way to resource them a lot more. But there has to be an interministerial collaboration on this.
Interministerial?
Yes.
And Akumia is actually suggesting a certain presidential, you know, intervention focus.
Yeah, exactly so. I mean, I say interministerial because you need to have that collaboration from national security, from the Ministry of Health, from, what do you call it, women and children, particularly in respect of welfare matters and stuff like that, who can provide some rehabilitation. And one of our biggest challenges in this country is rehabilitation. Anytime we have found a way to even identify the people, we have not been able to help.
Non-existent.
Yeah, we've not been able to help them. And I think that is an area that we need to strengthen under the Ministry of Women and Children's, under the social protection arrangement, so that these people can work together, and they need to be able to put together a working framework immediately. And the state would have to find a way to provide special financing. This should be treated as one of the emergencies that requires us to resort to the emergency funding arrangements we have in our constitution. And if we don't have the money for it, we must as well find a way to get that funding to be able to support them. But it has to happen quite quickly, because our hospitals today are challenged. If you go there and you see a lot of multiple kidney failures and all of that that is happening in our hospitals, it's so alarming. And for us to be engaging in this, that only not provide security threat, but has serious medical implications for us, I think that something has to happen. And as a country, we need to come together and rally around this, not make it a one-man fight. I'm happy that
people have been sharing some messages, and I'll be reading some of them with you on the first and even in the second, on the second issue. I'll share the messages with you shortly. Yes.
Yeah. So I think that generally, this is one of the areas that we need to quickly find a way to roll out an effective program as quickly as possible.
Okay.
And the government should encourage all people in Ghana or outside who have the capacity to support us, both in terms of technical knowledge and logistics, to be able to deal with this matter.
Thank you. A quick one by quick.
Yeah, you see the document you gave us, the final paragraph is a comprehensive response.
Okay.
And it says the United Nations Office for Drugs and Crime, through its Sahel program, supports governmental institutions in the region to strengthen the capacities of law enforcement and justice officials to fight illicit trafficking and terrorism. The office also delivers support on border control, land, area, and maritime borders, and on intelligence gathering and sharing. we should fit in what Adongo is saying right in that context.
Okay. Right, so some of your messages here, and okay, so we spoke to somebody from London and another student in London. Pakus Yasari says that very interesting country. For years, we have been trying to deal with basic things like sanitation, floods, armed robbery, and a plethora of issues. And here we are now adding drug abuse. God save Ghana. Francis says that as much as I agree that this is a national crisis, at the heart of it is the addiction to caffeine. That's the active ingredient which is causing the problem. Caffeine makes you hyperactive. It's in cough syrups. Okay, and energy drinks, painkillers, the way to handle it must be multifaceted. Okay, so you agree with my panelists on the way forward as far as that issue is concerned. Now, Yakubu says that I think that at this point our concentration and discussions should be on how we ensure that NHIS works in Ghana. It's clear that the scheme is a good social intervention to salvage the poor and average worker. Charles Nyame in Asaman Kese says that if we have a deceitful government like this NPP government, which has the courage to lie even to the international level about our health sector, it's the people who continue to suffer. Mustafa Abdullahi says situational report in Baku about the influx and use of Tramadol is scary. Migrants from Niger who render local pedicure services are the brain behind the sale of Tramadol in the municipality. Hardly will one be able to track their activities. The abuse of the drug in Baku is alarming. Authorities must wake up. Efo Newton in Mankraso says that the real problem about NHIS claims accumulated by service providers is lack of monitoring to make sure service providers do not fraudulently increase patient visits of facilities, which is directly proportional to the claims amount. The NHIS is bleeding through fraudulent claims submitted. That is what the CEO must concentrate on. Ibrahim Kopa in Tamale says, before the erstwhile NDC administration left political office, there was arrears of nearly 13 months, which the current MPP government had to clear going forward. As a result, the NDC shouldn't behave as though the current arrears are largely due to inertia on the part of the NPP government. Mickey Mann says that it is sad when president engages in propaganda. Nanado wanted to bite NDC in his infamous 1.2 billion non-existent figure. Kweku Bako knows the president goofed big time. Okay, yet he's trying to do damage control. Ilyasu in Tamale says the president has paid the NHIS debt left behind by the NDC. The NDC should have been clapping for the president rather than doubting what he says. What evidence has the NDC in disputing it? Okay, you may have sent this before. I told you about what the evidence they showed and what has been read here. Akwesi Obeng in Ejuso Bisase says that I commend Nana Akomia for educating the public about the NHIS arrears and NHIS debt. There is a difference between arrears and debt. So that's where you want to end it. All right, so we'll take a break here. Nana wants to say something briefly before we go.
You know, we talked about the drug abuse and how all of us need to come together. sometimes our institutions themselves, they don't promote confidence in the rest of us. Look, as we speak, you go to many of our local stations, there are all kinds of advertisements running on medicine and drugs. And categorical claims are made all the time about medicines and how they can heal this or that. And one medicine is supposed to heal 5, 6, 7 afflictions. And you wonder, now we have food and drugs. It's not even a board, it's not an authority.
It's authority.
Ghana Standards is not even a board, it's now an authority.
Yeah.
And even we laymen, you can see that these claims being made on national radio cannot be correct. And yet they go on and on and on. And so some of these things that are open and shut cases that are not attended, it undermines confidence in the rest of the public.
And it may be unfair to suggest that, you know, they are not, as it were, doing the work. Because if you monitor the things they have been doing, obviously they are working, but it is about maybe the capacity, like Dr. Drew Osai spoke about, and as it were, resources. But I think that if you check, particularly with this drug issues and things,
I'm sure
magicians appearing on our television.
Yes, that's what we say. But I'm sure you, Samson, you will not go and buy some of those medicines being sold that way.
Definitely not.
That's the point. So for we ourselves to be able to have confidence in our products, there has to be a proper certification procedure. So when I hear this, I know, oh, this has been certified by Standards Board Authority, this authority, and then I can go and buy.
Right.
Otherwise, even the economy is hurt because we don't have confidence. You see some of these claims.
All right. Okay.
You know that now.
Thank you, Nana. Right. So we take a break here. When we return, we'll see how we can get Ghana out of this embarrassing disgrace that appears not to end, because not only had we been informed about a contingent of Ghanaian journalists or reporters, so to speak, having fraudulently found themselves in Australia for the Commonwealth Games and having been deported, but now we are being told that even Team Ghana, members of Team Ghana, some athletes or whatever, have left the camp and are unaccounted for as the games have been concluded. We'll be right back.